Hello, fellow backpackers. Today I'm going to talk about backpacking hacks. What we mean by a hack is a cool tip or idea that you can actually use in the backcountry that maybe you wouldn't think of. If you cruise the internet, on YouTube, you're going to see all kinds of stuff on backpacking hacks. And frankly, a lot of them are really stupid, yet you would never use. So I've tried to make my list things that are useful or could be useful to you, and most of them I've actually used or done myself. So let's get into it. First hack. This one, if you're going anywhere where in bear country, you're gonna have to take one of these guys. And these bear vaults, if you've ever hiked in cold weather, you're getting up, it's in the 20s or 30s in the morning. These things are impossible to open. So there's this little groove right here. You have to get these tabs past the lid. So if you take a credit card, I usually just cut one in half and you jam it in that slot and just turn. It'll turn right past that slot. So you just slide it right in there and turn. That's a great one. I use that one all the time, unfortunately, because your hands get cold in the middle in the morning, and there's nothing like not being able to get your bear can open when you really need to eat. So this is another one that's kind of a cool idea. You can use this one camping too. So say you got a storm or you need a windbreak and you're rigging up your tarp with a bunch of cord, which you should always bring along. A lot of times you're tying onto these grommets, putting a lot of pressure on them, and then you have to untie all the knots at the end of the day when you're done. A neat little trick, this is really simple too. Just take your cord, slide it through, and just grab a stick off the ground. I'll use a pen for example. Slide that in there, pull it, there you go. And now you have two points of to tie down too, so you have, instead of just one that's tied on there with a knot. And when you're done at the end of the day, pull that out, done. Put your stuff away. So that's kind of a cool one to use with tarps. That way you don't have a million knots to untie. But another tip is, if you have tent poles, you should always bring extra tent cord, the stretchy tent cord. And even if you don't have tent poles, you should bring some of this stuff because it's really useful. One thing it's really useful on stretching out rain flies and tarps is that it's stretchy. And if you're familiar with nylon or thin nylon tents, especially when they get wet or dewy at night, they tend to sag, they stretch overnight. So if you take some stretchy tent cord and tie that off pretty tight, even if your thin nylon starts sagging, you'll still have enough tension to keep it nice and taut. So tent cord, that's a good one. Nalgene bottles. You can do a lot with a Nalgene bottle. A really fun thing to do if you have a group and you just want some ambient light. This is a clear one. It works better with the white ones that aren't clear. You can just throw your headlight inside of it and make a nice little ambient light lantern. And you can play cards by it. It's not so bright. But the other things you can use Nalgenes for, if it's cold weather, fill these things up with hot water before you go to bed. Throw it in the bottom of your sleeping bag. It'll keep you warm. And if you have wet socks, wrap a sock around there. That'll also keep it from burning you. But you can dry your socks that way. I rarely take Nalgenes anymore. They're nice because they have all these markings on them. They're heavy, so I leave those at home now. This is my water bottle of choice, these smart water bottles. So yeah, you lose the markings, but just make your own markings. This is 1 cup, this is 2 cup. Super, super light. But if you bring one of these, I would suggest bringing an extra cap and stashing that in your pack somewhere. Because if you lose the cap, you're kind of screwed. So these are also adaptable with the Sawyer squeeze filters too. Smart water bottles. They're really thin. They'll fit into your pack pockets really good. Highly, highly recommend these things. Another thing with the lanterns, I bring foil along on most of my trips. You can use foil as a windscreen for your stove. I use them for fish I'm in an area where you can have fires. I fashioned nice lanterns with a candle on top of the upside down pot with some foil to reflect it. You can be creative with a lot of stuff like that. So, on to some more nasty stuff. Toilet paper. A lot of areas, please do this because there's nothing like seeing somebody else's nasty toilet paper laying around. It's disgusting. On the JMT, you are required to bring out your toilet paper. So obviously you're gonna have a separate Ziploc bag just for toilet paper, and it's gonna stink. So a little trick, sprinkle a little baking soda into a couple of Ziploc bags, and that will help soak up the stink. So that's a good one for not being as gross as, it's not that gross. You'll get used to it. Before you go on your trip, don't forget to hit up the dollar store or the Dollar Tree, your local discount store. You can get like toiletries, the little sample sizes for really cheap. So there's all kinds of neat little things you can buy there for really cheap. So check that one out. Sleeping. Sleeping is one of the most important things to do on a long backpacking trip. So anything you can do to be more comfortable. This one seems obvious, but I try to stay up as late as possible and stop drinking right after dinner so I can not have to get up in the middle of the night, because I hate getting up in the middle of the night. But it's not just getting up in the middle of the night, it's your body has to work really hard to keep pee warm. So if you gotta go, just get up and go. But if it's a cold night especially, that's a good idea. But another tip that a lot of people don't realize, this one really works too. If it's gonna be a cold night, right before you get ready to go to bed, I'll have like a Snickers bar or something that's something high in sugar and carbs, because your body will start digesting that, and while you're in your sleeping bag, that'll actually keep you warm. So I can tell you that because I love my Snickers bars, and I always have one for dessert almost every night on the trail. It's one of my favorite things. And the other thing I like to do, I bring in an extra pair of socks. I'll bring 2 pairs of socks and I rotate them out for hiking. Then I'll bring a third pair, a nice fluffy, maybe even a wool pair, but usually I'll bring something like wool, or I won't bring cotton. And those are just for sleeping. There's nothing like washing your feet, being semi-clean somewhere, putting on your nice socks or booties, and it'll keep your feet warm, and it's just a nice treat, and it helps me sleep. So those are just things I've learned from experience. There's all kinds of stupid little tricks. This one, I don't know why you would use it, but maybe you forgot your watch at home and you're on a day hike, and you're trying to figure out if you can get some more miles in before the end of the day, and you don't have a way to see time. If you hold your hand out like this between the sun and the horizon, each finger width represents about 15 minutes. So you just measure up till you're from the horizon. It doesn't always work in the Sierra, because if you're in a valley, obviously you have to guess where the horizon is, but that one works. So if it's just between the horizon and the sun is 4 fingers, that would be 1 hour. Is that right? 15:30, yeah. So that one you probably will never use, because everybody knows what time it is, I think. But actually I don't, because I don't like to know what time it is when I'm hiking. All right, so everybody should know about Tyvek for a ground cloth. The stuff they use in building houses to waterproof houses. You might be able to score some from a construction zone. Some places sell it. You can buy it at Home Depot. I think places like Campmore will sell ones with grommets built into them. It's super, super light, and it's way lighter than if you have a tent, a $500 tent, and you want to protect it. Instead of using a heavy, a lot of people buy really light tents, and then they buy a nice footprint. That's like a pound. So it kind of defeats the purpose of having a $500 ultralight tent. So check out Tyvek. That's a good product to have along. Another little thing about shoes. I haven't tried this one, but I've heard that if you wear some of those lady pantyhose socks and wear that first before you put a sock on, that acts as a liner and really is good at preventing blisters. I myself am sold on Darn Tough socks. They're a thinner sock, and that's all I wear. In the winter, if it's cold, I would have to wear 2 pairs. So I'd wear the thin, like Darn Tough sock, and then I put a thicker one on that. So liner socks will save you a lot of foot problems. So check those out. Being waterproof on the trail. My pack gets wet all the time. It seems like whenever I go backpacking, it rains. And I've tried the tarp and all that stuff. When it tends to rain and you're on a pass, those poncho things fly all over the place. So I have a pack cover. I don't always get it on right at the right time. What works better for me is just bring a couple of garbage bags. They are kind of heavy, so I'll have one for sure to stuff my sleeping bag inside of that. And I don't use a stuff sack in my sleeping bag. I just line the inside of my pack and just jam it in there, and then compress it with other stuff. But if you keep it in a garbage bag, you don't have to worry about your sleeping bag being the most important thing to getting wet. And Ziploc bags for waterproofness, I always bring tons of Ziploc bags. And you're going to get extras of those as you go through your food, so you don't have to, you have backups coming as you eat your meals. So there is an ultralight solution to the waterproof bags. It's, if you're familiar with cooking a turkey, there's these turkey cooking bags, turkey roasting bags. They're made out of Mylar, it's just thin foil stuff. And they're pretty strong. Same thing, those little balloon things that you see at the store, happy birthday, those kind of things. Those are super ultralight and they are waterproof. So that's not a bad tip. And I guess I can't mention hacks without mentioning duct tape. You're going to need repairs. If you don't have your cordage, your tent cord, even those little zip tie, those ties that you use on bread. I like to have those. Sometimes I've repaired a strap that broke once. But duct tape, you can fashion straps out of duct tape. Don't bring a whole roll of duct tape. Roll a little bit around your bear canister or maybe your hiking pole, or I usually just put it right around my lighter. So last hack, this one isn't, I don't make fire very often. This is for lighting my stove. I always bring 2 Bics, gotta have a backup. And I'll bring a few waterproof matches and stash them somewhere in my pack. And I'll just put a little duct tape around there. So if you have to start a fire, say you're going in bad weather conditions, or it might be rainy or windy and it's really hard to start a fire, there's a few tricks. You can buy products of these little things that are like super impregnated with something that you start fires with, but you don't need to buy those. You can make your own. You can, those little birthday candles that never blow out? I think there's some gunpowder or something on this fuse and you can't blow them out. That is a great emergency fire starter. They're pretty small, a couple of those. And if you have enough kindling and fire starting material, you can get a fire starter with one of those. I used to bring wax and candles a lot. Or you can bring dryer lint, is extremely flammable and free. You can take cotton balls or the cotton pads and dip them in wax. Just heat up melt a candle and dip those in wax. And those are super good fire starters. So the idea is you start those on fire, then you add small pieces of wood and tinder to get a fire started. So also you can use Vaseline instead of wax, because that will burn also. And sometimes you can use Vaseline to take care of things like crotch rot, so things slide around better so you don't hurt. And in a pinch, you can burn Doritos or corn chips. They're full of oil and they're extremely flammable. So you probably have things in your pack already that you can do a lot of this stuff with. So I would love to hear what other people's hacks are, and hopefully a couple of these will be useful to you. So hope you enjoyed that, and I hope there's something that you can use. So happy hiking. Thanks.